How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all doing well out there. I'm continuing along today with my Home Assistant garden rebuild project. So as most of you probably already know, I'm revamping a control system that I had made for my indoor garden a couple years back. And this time I'm trying to make it simpler, I'm trying to make it more efficient and just improve it completely, really. So I've already made a couple videos on it. The first one was an overview of the whole system and what the plans are for it. The second was a look at the grow room and some of the physical equipment that I'm using. And now this video, I'm going to look at installing Home Assistant on a Raspberry Pi 4 with an SSD rather than a MicroSD card. And then once the install is done for that, I want to look at installing some add-ons that I know I'm going to need. Things like remote access stuff, Samba Share, ESP Home, the very basics, and I might add more as I go and finish the system, but this group I know I'm going to need to start for sure, so we'll start there. Before I get rolling on this video, I just want to take a minute to sort of promote myself and plug the channel. If you want to support this channel and buy me more time that I can take off of work to produce content, make videos, make diagrams, answer questions in emails, that kind of thing, I have enabled YouTube memberships for this channel. So memberships give you different tiers that you can subscribe to monthly, and the different tiers have different perks. No matter which level you sub to, all members get a very snazzy little LED Gardener logo next to their name in the comments to show everybody that you're a supporter and how long you've been supporting the channel. I get a lot of emails from people asking about automation stuff and for help with their systems, and I just don't have time to get to all these emails, so I've sort of geared my membership perks towards giving people who support the channel priority in responding and trying to help them out. The perks start at the breadboarder tier with things like priority replies to your comments if you're looking for more info or clarification on something, and access to some members-only content and behind-the-scenes stuff. The ESP crew gets shoutouts and early access to new videos, and then the top tiers are more about connecting, whether it's just chatting about a design you have in mind or getting help with your system. And if you're at the Home Assistance tier at the very top, I'll actually hop on a call or remote into your system and help you get something working if you're stuck. I want to stress that I'm not going to be gating any of my usual content, and everyone will still have access to the same drawings and code and videos. Members will just get guaranteed responses and a little more behind the scenes stuff. I intend to completely open source this new project that I'm working on, and I can back those words up by saying have a look at the old project that I did, the first one, where I shared all the code that I wrote. I created a system diagram right down to conductor level. I made a parts list, and it was completely free, right? But it took me a lot of time to do, and that's at a premium for me. I work a full-time job, I have a growing family, I'm pretty busy. Supporting me will directly allow me to take more time off of work to continue to pursue this passion, I guess, and share with everybody. So that's my pitch. Okay, back on track here. So Home Assistant. Home Assistant is such an amazingly awesome and powerful software because it's so flexible. It does not care what you use it for. You could use it to automate the lights in your house or build yourself an alarm system or run your indoor garden. Essentially, you feed it some input, it processes that data, you tell it what you want it to do with it, and then it will perform some actions as a result. I'll give you a really high-level summary of how my system is laid out here. So Home Assistant gets installed on the Raspberry Pi 4, and this Pi plugs into my network so other connected devices can communicate with it through wired or wireless network connections. You don't have to have any displays or monitors of any type hooked up to the Pi because you view Home Assistant using your computer or your phone or tablet by navigating to the web page that it serves. I leave my Pi sitting right next to my router and it never moves. As you've probably seen, I have 4 of these custom little 3D printed boxes in my garden that I'm calling my stations. Each of these stations has an ESP32 development board on a PCB that I designed. The ESP32 connects to several sensors and devices and also connects to my router over Wi-Fi, which allows it to then communicate with my Home Assistant Pi that's on the same network. Home Assistant takes in all the sensor data that each station provides, and then I can use this data in different ways. I can display it on my dashboard using text or gauges or graphs so that I can see the data myself, and I can also feed it into automations and scripts that I've written so Home Assistant can make decisions for me and then perform actions on its own. For example, if one of my humidity sensors reports that it's 80% in one of my tents, then I might want Home Assistant to turn up the speed of my exhaust fan for that tent, and if there's a humidifier running, I might want to turn off the outlet that it's plugged into. If I tell the system every time I make a reservoir change at one of the stations, I might, for example, want the system to send my phone a notification if it detects that it's been 10 days since I did my last change. For this system, as I said, I'll be using a Raspberry Pi 4. This one here is the model with 4 gigabytes of RAM. I've got a microSD card and reader, which will just be used for initial setup only, an Ethernet cable to plug the Pi into my network, and a 240GB Kingston SSD with a StarTech SATA to USB cable. Some of these adapter cables work on the Pi, but others don't, so if you're not using this StarTech piece, then go to the website I've linked in the description for a list of tested and working SSDs and cables. The ones I'm using are both recommended by the author, and they work just great. The main advantage SSDs have over microSD cards here is the fact that they're much less likely to die on you if you're writing to them very frequently, like I will be in this instance for all of my sensor values, and that they're able to hold a lot more data for history of your sensors. It's nice to be able to go way back in time to compare data and see how things are trending. My Pi runs super snappy on this SSD, and it boots up remarkably quickly. Okay, to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is download and install the Raspberry Pi Imager software. Goal number 1 is to set the Pi up to try and boot from USB first before failing over to booting from the microSD card. To do this, we're going to have to write some instructions to the microSD card, and then we're going to use that to flash the EEPROM on the Pi. I'm going to plug my microSD card into my computer and click Choose OS. I'll go down to Misc Utility Images, Bootloader, and USB Boot. Under Storage, I'll select the microSD and then write it. Now, with my Raspberry Pi unplugged from power, I'll insert the microSD and then power up the Pi. Give it at least 10 seconds and you'll see this green light start blinking repeatedly, which means the bootloader was flashed successfully. Next, I'm going to install Home Assistant on my SSD. I'll plug the SSD into my computer with the USB to SATA adapter, and then in the Imager, I'll go back to the very start, and this time we'll go to Other Specific Purpose OS, Home Assistants and Home Automation, Home Assistant, and then pick the RPi 4 version. I've just got to select my SSD for the storage and then write it. I'm going to kill the power to the Pi again. I'll plug in my newly flashed SSD, I'll plug the Pi into my network, and then power it up again. In a couple minutes time, you should be able to see this preparation screen from your computer on the same network by typing http:// and then the IP address of the Pi followed by :8123, or by typing in http:// homeassistant.local:8123. That colon is specifying port number 8123. Either way you do it, you'll want to bookmark this so you can get to it easily. Make sure that your browser isn't trying to do this via a secure connection by putting HTTPS at the front instead. It won't work this way, and it has to be just HTTP with no S. It took me 1 minute and 21 seconds from the time I first powered the Pi up until I was able to see this screen. 3 minutes after this, the preparation was complete, and I was able to start setting up Home Assistant. Once you get through this, it gives you the option to start setting up integrations right away, but I'll just skip this and do this a little bit later. So here's what you're first greeted with. There's not really a whole lot going on. The first thing I'll do from this point is click on my profile in the bottom and turn on advanced mode. This gives you a little bit more power and lets you see some stuff that's not normally visible. Next, I'm going to go to configuration, devices and services, and then areas, and I'm just going to delete out these default areas like kitchen since I don't really want them cluttering things up. Areas are just a way to organize where the different parts of your system are in physical space. Next, I'm going to work on installing my core group of add-ons. I'll go to Configuration, Add-ons, Backups, and Supervisor, and hit the Add-ons store. I'll start with File Editor. This is a nice add-on because it lets you work on your text configuration files right within Home Assistant. When it's ready to go, I'll start it and then click Show in Sidebar so I can easily access it. I also want the DuckDNS add-on and the Nginx Home Assistant SSL proxy. These two add-ons are going to allow me to access and control Home Assistant when I'm away from home and not on my home network. If you don't set up remote access in one way or another, you won't be able to connect your system from your phone or any other computers when you're out and about and not on your home network. I'm not going to cover the setup for these two add-ons in detail because it's pretty involved, and I've already done it once in another video that I'm going to pop up in the top corner right now. I'll also link this in the video description. The video is from the summer of 2020, so some of the menus have moved around a little bit, but the steps and the procedure that you take to get the remote access working with these add-ons is still the same. The documentation tab for each add-on also gives you some good instructions on how to install them, so you can check these out too. If you don't want to go through the hassle of setting up DuckDNS and Nginx, you can also get remote access the easy way by going to Configuration and then Home Assistant Cloud and setting up a subscription to Home Assistant Cloud. This is far simpler to do, but it costs you $6.50 a month, although the money goes towards development of Home Assistant and ESP Home, so you get the bonus of supporting the team along with the super simple remote access. Next thing I'll do is install the ESP Home add-on, which is going to run all of my ESP32 boards inside the stations. You have to have the advanced mode turned on in your profile to do this, so make sure that's done. So this ESP Home add-on that's visible in the Community Add-ons section says it's deprecated, but if you click on it anyway, there are some instructions in there for how to add the proper version. So I follow this link, and then I'll just copy the address bar of my browser here. I don't want to actually install it, but I'll go back to the add-ons page and then hit these three dots at the top right. I'll go Repositories and then paste in the URL I copied and hit Add. I don't see my new repository yet, so I just have to refresh the browser and now it becomes visible. I'll click on the main version and hit install. And I want to see this in my sidebar too, so I'll toggle that on. The next one I'm going to add is Samba Share. When this is installed and running, it'll allow you to access all the files and folders of your Home Assistant Pi from your computer and move things back and forth easily. This is really handy for grabbing a copy of your config files or automation files or whatever if you want to edit them in another program rather than the file editor on your computer. It's also nice for moving backups to and from your backup folder. The last one I'm going to grab is the Terminal and SSH add-on. It used to be much easier to break your Home Assistant instance, where if you made a change to your config file that the system didn't quite like, or any other minor modification it seemed, sometimes you'd reboot and then you'd find that the system wouldn't actually boot up. It would get stuck and you could ping it, but you couldn't actually boot into Home Assistant. So you had to use this SSH add-on to get in and then revert whatever changes sort of on the back end to get the thing to boot. It's not really the case anymore. I can't remember the last time I had an issue like that where I couldn't get the system to boot, but I always install this add-on anyway. And we also need it if we're going to be installing the Home Assistant Community Store, or HACS, which is sort of like the add-on store that we're in right now, but it's full of user-created custom elements. And there's a really awesome scheduler available in HACS created by Niels Faber. that I use for scheduling things like grow light on-off times and plant feeding times. Once the SSH add-on is done, I'm going to get HACS installed in this video as well, but we'll add and configure the scheduler itself in a future video. The setup for HACS is a fair bit of work actually, but it's worth it in my opinion, so we're going to do it off the get-go. So the first step is to install this terminal and SSH add-on. Next, you start it. And we're going to copy this line of code from the HACS setup guide. And then open the web UI. And then I want to paste in what I copied. And to do this, Control V did not work for me, so instead I had to hold Shift and then press the insert key. Looks like it's done now, and I need to restart. So I'll go Configuration, Settings. I'll check my config to make sure everything's okay, which is just a good practice every time you reboot, and then hit Restart. While you're waiting for Home Assistant to come back, you're going to need to sign up for a GitHub account in order to get HACS going. When you've got your GitHub account up and running, go back to Home Assistant Configuration, Devices and Services, and add an integration. Search for HACS, and then go through all these checkboxes. Follow this link to your GitHub profile and complete the integration. Done! I'd say that was easy, but it really isn't. There's quite a few steps to get this thing going. Well, I think this is as good a place as any to end this video. We've got Home Assistant running on an SSD on the Raspberry Pi. We have our Coir add-ons installed and ready to go. HACS is all set up. And from this point, we can dig deeper into Home Assistant and look at all the different parts and pieces, how to bring them in, how to get them working with one another, and how to run the garden. If you're enjoying this content, please do me a solid, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.